Farming protests erupt across Europe. A report. Introduction. Since late 2023, farmers across Europe have taken to the streets in a series of protests, highlighting various grievances and demanding action from governments and the European Union (EU). These protests, characterized by blocked roads, tractor convoys, and demonstrations, reflect a growing sense of frustration and discontent within the agricultural sector. Key grievances: rising costs. Farmers are grappling with surging input costs for fuel, fertilizer, and animal feed, driven by factors like the war in Ukraine and global supply chain disruptions. This, coupled with stagnant or declining food prices, is squeezing their profit margins and making their livelihoods increasingly unsustainable. Unfair competition. Some farmers protest against what they perceive as unfair competition from imports, particularly from countries with lower production costs and weaker environmental regulations. They argue that such imports undercut their prices and threaten their ability to compete. Environmental regulations. While many farmers support environmental sustainability, some feel burdened by complex and costly regulations imposed by the EU's Common Agricultural Policy (CAP). They argue that these regulations are inflexible and hinder their ability to adapt their practices. Bureaucracy. Farmers also complain about excessive bureaucracy and administrative burdens, which they say consume valuable time and resources. They call for simpler regulations and easier access to government support programs. Country-specific issues. While the overall themes of rising costs and unfair competition resonate across Europe, specific issues vary by country. For example, Netherlands, French protests have focused on concerns about the rising cost of diesel fuel and the government's plan to phase out glyphosate herbicide. Germany, farmers have expressed concerns about the impact of free trade agreements, with countries like Mercosur and Canada fearing increased competition. Eastern Europe, farmers in countries like Poland and Romania have protested against the influx of cheap Ukrainian grain, which they say undercuts their prices. Impact and responses. Separatists have garnered significant media attention and public sympathy, putting pressure on governments and the EU to address farmers' concerns. Some governments have offered concessions, such as tax breaks on fuel or financial aid packages. The EU is currently reviewing its CAP, seeking to make it more environmentally friendly and responsive to farmers' needs. Challenges and outlook. Despite some progress, finding solutions to the complex issues facing European agriculture remains challenging. The war in Ukraine continues to disrupt supply chains and fuel prices, while the EU faces pressure to balance environmental goals with the needs of farmers.